Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I'm your host, Jonathan Eterberg, and today I sit down with Nazrin Choudhury, director of the Oscar-nominated short film Red, White, and Blue. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Nazrin Choudhury is the director of the short film Red, White, and Blue, the story of a single mother in Arkansas who must cross state lines in search of an abortion. After winning the Grand Jury Award for Best Live-Action Short at the Edmonton International Film Festival, the film is nominated for Best Live-Action Short Film at the 96th Academy Awards. And Nazrin is kind enough to join me today to talk about the film. Nazrin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate being on here with you.
Now, first off, congratulations on a truly moving film and on your Oscar nomination, of course. What was your first reaction on hearing the news that you were nominated for an Oscar?
Well, my reaction was not in isolation. I had my daughter sitting next to me, and then I was on a Zoom with a few members of the cast and crew. And I think it was the third category to be announced. And it just happened so quickly. You're trying to process it in real time. Did that really happen? And then forgetting that there's all these other categories to be announced that you're equally interested in just as an audience member.
Right.
And because you've got this phenomenal news about this film that started its journey late, because by the time we actually are there at the ceremony on the 10th of March, we won't even have reached a year anniversary of when we started filming this.
Oh, wow.
And so the trajectory for this has been very quick, but probably speaks to the story landing for an audience and ultimately the Academy. So we were just shocked and thrilled is the summary of that reaction.
And now you said, I've read that this is your directorial debut, but you've obviously worked a lot in television, writing and producing in television. What was what did you get from that experience that you were able to bring into making this film as a first-time director?
Yes, and in fact, just to say that when I first started out writing, I started in film before I transitioned into TV in the UK space, and then in the US for the last 12 years or so, I've been out here writing and producing. And in TV, it's a writer's medium and led by a showrunner, which means writers and producers often get to be on set. And working very closely with directors to maintain the overall vision and story of the series that you're working on. And so having that experience of being on set, having it so that you are the person that ultimately that the story, the keys to the story kingdom lie with you. So ostensibly in TV, what happens is you get the director's cut and then you get the producer's cut that then gets sent to the studio network. So you're able to maintain an authorial vision over the work. And being on set is super helpful to that. Once you get into film, it's a very different landscape. That very much is a director's medium.
Right.
And so it took me a lot longer to direct than I initially thought I would, because when you're working in that TV space, you have that itch scratched of wanting to direct to a certain extent, because it ultimately still goes through an editorial process that allows you to weigh in. With this film, it was my directorial debut, and it was because it was a story that felt very personal to me, and one that I really felt I was the best placed person to tell this story, because I knew what every single scene, every single frame, the layers of nuance that I needed. And I knew that I needed to be that person helming this. And to go back to your question, I think having that TV experience really did help, because we're a short film. We didn't have any of the studio and network resources. In fact, I am the studio and network even now. And so every single creative decision that you see, is mine. And that comes with the pros and cons of the fact that the pro is that I can maintain that creative vision and every single decision is mine. The con is that I don't have the infrastructure to help when things need to get fixed, because most of life, including film, is problem solving.
Right.
And this short film had, a budget that it had high production values and a budget that didn't always meet that. And so limited resources. We have a road trip, we have child actors, and that has an impact on the schedule. So when you have a carousel in a scene that we have, that's a pivotal moment, and that breaks down, and it's 1 hour before the final day of filming where you're about to lose Juliet Donenfeld, who plays Maddie in our film. Like, how do you deal with that? And I think the experience being in TV where you're constantly rewriting on the fly or coming up with breaking story and reconceiving things while still maintaining the story point, I think just having that experience of just keeping calm under pressure, translating that into my role as a director in order to make sure everyone else is keeping their heads around them, because it is very easy for everyone to just become very concerned, and the concern then in fact impact their ability to do the work if they don't understand that there is a solution behind it, and that you as a leader can help deliver that solution, and you as the leader meaning being the director on this directing.
So you mentioned a moment ago that, you know, it's a very personal film, and watching it, it was very personal to me as well. So much so that I had to bring my wife in and show her and let her watch it. And she also similarly experienced a very personal reaction to it. So what was it about bringing that to some of these serious topics like abortion, reproductive rights, single parenting, all of that, all in 20 minutes to a half hour? How did you decide to bring all of that into that short time frame of the short film?
Well, I think as a writer, everything I do, there has to be a personal connection to it. And I think most of the best stories have that connection. And so for me, specifically to do with Red, White, and Blue, I myself have a lived experience in which I needed the same procedure as an abortion, but for a non-viable pregnancy. I was already a mother of two young daughters at the time. And without this procedure, for a pregnancy that just was not going to go to term in any way, shape, or form, I needed to have that healthcare in order to be alive today, to be the mother to my two girls. That's kind of one layer of resonance and connection to it. The other layer is the fact that I have two teenage daughters who will be inheriting the legacy of the Supreme Court's decision to reverse Roe v. Wade. And so trying to think about the fact that for the majority of my life, whether it was in the UK or the US, I have been able to rely on the security of knowing that that healthcare is on offer to me. But my children are inheriting a landscape in which that is not afforded to them. And that is an entirely daunting and frightening place for them to be. And you mentioned your wife, which, I think is so deeply meaningful to me that you're watching it and then you're sharing it with your wife, who is having her own very unique experience because maybe of her lived experiences too. I think that's the case for so many people here in this country dealing with the real world repercussions of it. And the reason why they might be responding to our film, it's appropriately titled Red, White, and Blue, because it does affect every single person living in this country. Everybody knows someone who has had an abortion, whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
Someone has had to have an abortion for a very important reason, not just the reasons that we go into in our film. Whatever it may be, no one goes into it lightly. There is an emotional, physical, psychological toll that is put upon you if you have to go through that. To have that then denied to you and to put yourself at risk, or have someone be put at risk because they can't get that healthcare immediately and as close by to their homes as possible without having to go 2 states across at great expense, not just financially, but time-wise, that's a day's salary that someone might have to give up and then some. To me, it was about bringing all of the sum of our experiences into this short and trying to pack as much of that storytelling in a dense way, yet simplifying it at the same time, because it's kind of a quiet story until it's not. It's kind
Right.
of a story that you feel like you've seen and are familiar with. And whether you're pro-choice or not, by the way, you still might be like, oh, yeah, I've seen this before. That's how we also sometimes dismiss the conversations that we need to have, because even though we are very pro-choice, there might be an apathy and a fatigue that comes with a conversation that you feel like you've had already. But we can't have that fatigue. We can't have that exhaustion because it does actually then translate into the people who need us to stand up and be vociferous about it, supporting them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned being a personal story. And my wife and I, we actually lost our first child almost 15 years ago now. But unfortunately, we have three wonderful, healthy children now, and we didn't have anything related to abortion per se, but obviously similar health challenges around pregnancy. And I like that your film makes it okay to talk about those things. It's, people don't talk about losing children or miscarriages or abortions a lot. And in your film, I really like the fact that it makes it okay to talk about those in a public forum with other people, ask people about their experiences and things like that.
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry that you suffered that tragic loss. I imagine it can't have been easy. I think this film is a celebration of
Hmm.
parenthood, and motherhood specifically, as much as it is about abortion. And if you have watched our film, then you'll know precisely what I'm talking about. And everything you say is so pertinent because it was the intention to just be able to start a conversation just around our dinner tables and give
Yeah.
permission for people to talk about this. I won't go into who told me this, but someone came to me recently, someone who's part of our cast and crew. I'm just trying to, because it's their story, I won't divulge their name, but they
Sure.
said that they and a family member had never talked about this particular issue, and they're super close, but it was the one topic that they never talked about because one person was on one side of the
Right.
political argument. And it's important to say this isn't even really, for me, something that feels like it should be political. This is just a human story. It's
Right.
a human conversation to be had. But just to put it in those terms, they were on different ends of the political spectrum. And when Roe v. Wade got reversed, that person who was maybe more on the side of restricting abortion, actually, it caused them to look inwardly. And then our film just cracked open their thinking. And for the first time, they had the discussion that they had never had in their lives. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to say, hey, do this and do that and preach your
Right.
didactic, but it's like there might be someone in your own life who has had to go through something, and it's a very painful experience. And perhaps in watching our film, for any of the number of reasons why someone might need or want this, maybe it will move you closer to seeing those people in your life and having a conversation. And for those people who have had to go through it, like your wife and you, like you said, it's deeply painful, but we need to talk about it as well, because that's how
Absolutely.
you can create some form of healing, even though the
Hmm.
healing will never be complete. There's always scars to the experiences that you have. But by talking about it, you can connect with others who can feel less alone.
Yep, absolutely. Now, I want to dance around things as much as I can here, but talk briefly about the end of the film without giving away the ending. Did you start the story at that point and kind of work your way backward from there and how to get to that ending point? Or was the ending that you came up with part of a natural outgrowth from the story as you wrote it and decided to start telling it?
You know, it's it was always there. Like I knew that was a moment that I needed to land because I needed to show the depth and breadth with which that decision has affected the people who might need it the most. So I knew, and there's a couple of times actually where I have known exactly what I needed to do. You know, people are calling this a twist, by the way. I think there's a gut punch to this story in terms of the turn it takes. And I don't call it a twist. I only mention it in an expeditious manner because of that's how everyone else is talking about it. That story was
Hmm.
actually there for you to see all along. And so to go back to what I was saying, there's been a couple of times where I know that this is a central moment I need to land. And then what is the architecture around that story? But that isn't to say it's all built up just for the sake of this one story point. It's not.
Right.
It's like, how do you honor that and honor the lives that are impacted by this decision and tell the full scope and world of this one young family in Arkansas having to deal with these um, laws that are now unfortunately set up to inhibit and endanger them versus helping them. So I did know that I wanted to land that moment, but everything around it is telling a deeper story, whether it's, you know, single parents who don't have enough to look after their kids or a rainy day fund when things crop up like this, that means it's going to throw them into disarray. You know, the film is really a commentary about so many things, not just the one moment of it all. And I know we're talking elliptically here, but I think the main thing I wanted to do was the thing that we were kind of talking about earlier, and we can get more specific about it, which is um the fatigue and exhaustion of thinking you know what this story is like, yeah, we know all of this. I kind of wanted to lean into that and for you to feel that a little bit and thinking you knew where this story
Hmm.
was going. And it's not like a sensationalized trying to pull the rug from under your feet in any kind of way, but it's more like this is a metaphor for the fact that none of us really know what's going on in someone else's life. You think you
Right.
know, but you really don't know. And I think, you know, the twist of it all is no, that story was there for you to see all along. You just saw it one way because that's how we judge and that's how we
Right.
perceive what a situation would be, whether we're in favor of that person or not. It was really to land that let's not ever assume we know another family's situation until we know it. And let's give space to just see other human beings and understand that maybe there's something about how we all need to engage with others in a compassionate way.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way of looking at it. Now, touching briefly on your two actresses, Brittany Snow as the mother, and then you mentioned earlier Julia Donenfeld portraying her daughter. How did you get connected with both of them, and what was it like working, with those two actresses for most of the film?
Brittany Snow was someone I really wanted to work with because, you know, I just think she's got so talented. And I think after you watch our film, how she's not a muse for every single director, I don't know. But she probably is. And I think our film really highlights everything that I knew she was capable of. You know, I really like seeing actors who you feel like have so much depth to them, despite the fact that they're in broadly entertaining films. So, you know, Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love or Uncut Gems, or
Yeah.
Jim Carrey in, you know, The Truman Show and any of the wonderful things he's done. They come from this broadly entertaining comedic world. And I think sometimes some of those actors make the best people for a dramatic story like the one that we tell in Red, White, and Blue. And I certainly felt like with Brittany Snow, I felt like still waters run very deep. And so she was on an early wish list. I worked with these phenomenal casting directors, and incredibly, she was also on their list when they were pitching the ideas. And so somehow those two things, you sometimes feel like the universe is speaking to you. And so
Right.
much of this project, I feel like someone up there is helping us because every time I need somebody, which isn't to say there hasn't been challenges and things that we have to deal with that really could have jeopardized or scuppered our production. But mostly speaking, so many people came at exactly the right time that I needed them to. And even now, because I'm the studio network, like I say, something happens and I need to do something and I'm having to react in real time. And especially with the Academy of it all, there's all these needs and someone appears to miraculously help me. And so it feels like the universe is sometimes speaking to me and trying to do everything it can for this film to be in existence and there for an audience. Juliet Donenfeld was not on my radar at all, in like stark opposition to the conversation we just had with Brittany Snow. But she came into my consciousness through, again, these phenomenal casting directors I had, Julie Tucker, Ross Mayerson, CJ Molidor. CJ handled a lot of bringing the young talent into the audition process. And once I saw Juliet, I just knew she was absolutely right for the part. And the two of them together, we didn't even have time for chemistry reads. I mean, you don't. It's a short film. Who has time for
Right.
that? So yeah, somehow though, it was it was just meant to be because I really feel like they feel like mother and daughter on screen, and they had a wonderful, wonderful chemistry off screen too.
Yep. Now I want to move on to a couple of questions not specifically related to the film, but before I do that, is there anything else you want us to know about Red, White, and Blue?
Only that we made this with all the love in the world. And we call the community of people who are coalescing around us, our elephant herd. There is an elephant metaphor here. There's a line that Juliet speaks, and she plays Maddie at the end about, the matriarchy. But it doesn't have to be just about the matriarchy. It's also about the male allies who are part of that elephant herd. In the script, I think the way I had written it is she's doodling and there's this elephant, that theme that runs through it, and she's doodling this elephant on her hand and then ultimately in a drawing that she makes. And that elephant has a symbolism for so many reasons, which is, where the story goes, the idea is that the deep subtext is elephants don't forget. But really turning that on its head to just say, but they are also these magnificent creatures who look out for one another. And thank you for being part of my herd. And thank you for whatever guilt you feel. I'm absolving you of that guilt in this moment, because actually you were there for me. So thank you for being part of my herd. And so we welcome everyone to join this herd of people who are supporting our film.
Excellent. Well, we'll try and get the herd as big as we possibly can here going forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, I know you recently attended the Oscar nominee events in Hollywood. What was that experience like, and did you get to talk to anyone that you've always wanted to meet at that event?
Yes, I'm so many people. It was just a room full of all the people that you deeply admire, not just in recent times because of the work they've done that have put them into nominee category. That means they're there being celebrating, acknowledged alongside you. But people that you have known and grown up with your whole life, like Steven Spielberg. I think I went up to him and said thank you to him for bringing so much joy, to my world through his filmmaking. And I had been on the red carpet with him at the Warhorse premiere in the UK a long time ago. And I told him, I was on the red carpet with you, but you were so busy signing autographs and talking to people, I didn't want to disturb you. And he was so charming, kind, and said, oh, so it took you 12 years to come and say hi to me. And then he's taken out his phone with the notes app and saying, I'm going to watch the shorts, but I want to remember this. Your film is red, white, and blue. And he's writing it down on his phone and then looking at my name badge and like making sure that he's got my name down so that he can
Oh,
remember
that's
it when he goes
wonderful.
to watch the film. I mean, like that doesn't happen often, does it? I mean, like it's
Right.
crazy. And then I was with I saw Cillian Murphy in London recently. There was an Oscar nominees reception in London. I mean, like I had a wonderful conversation at the luncheon with Margot Robbie, with Carey Mulligan. Coleman Domingo is there. He and I worked together on Fear the Walking Dead. And so he is nominated in the Best Actor category. So
Hmm.
seeing him at the luncheon and then going on to London and seeing those same faces and like speaking to Alexander Payne, who is a director that I really love. Um, all these just yeah, giants of cinema. It's amazing, and it's incredible to know that at some point you will be celebrating being at the awards with them, celebrating their work, and maybe they're celebrating you in some way, shape, or form too.
It sounds like an excellent time, not just the Oscars luncheon, but the other events in London as well. Now, this next question is probably going to be the hardest one I ask, but if you could only pick your top three films, what would they be?
Oh, that is hard. I mean, The Godfather is, a seminal film for me and always has been. There is a Hong Kong film called Infernal Affairs that became a film in the Hollywood space known as The Departed, but I actually really love the original Infernal Affairs, both of parts one and parts two. Same with Godfather, actually, parts one and parts two. And then, oh, there's so many you're asking me to pick from all the ones. I'm going to say this because it comes into my head, but it's up there, but there's probably others that are going to come to me after the fact. There is a French Canadian film called Insandy, and it was I'm not sure if it was Denis Villeneuve's first directorial effort or not, but it's a very meaningful film to me. It's just a brilliant, brilliant film set in two time periods, which was at that time when it was made, present day Canada, and then went into the war in Lebanon in the 70s. And it is just crafted with so many layers of storytelling and surprising reveals. And you think you know what the story is, but you then don't. I guess I respond to those kind of stories because I did it myself in this short film that I have, but it's
Right.
excellent. And I'd like to say that I was following Denis Villeneuve's career long before he became the well-known director of Arrival and Prisoners and the Dune franchise that we know him to be today. So go check it out. It's extraordinary, that film.
Definitely, we'll have to take a look at that. And then, in the same vein, but a little bit more of a fun question, if you could invite any three movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be and why?
That is so difficult. Um, Sunset Boulevard. I think, what's the character's name? Norma, what's her last
Norma
name?
Desmond.
Right,
Desmond.
Norma Desmond. I think that would be fascinating. I think I would like to invite Marlon Brando's character from The Godfather. And then who else? You have completely stumped me. I need to think about who uh
No problem. We can start with The Godfather and Norma Desmond. That's a good dinner party to start.
yeah, and maybe we should have Margot Robbie's Barbie along for the ride because I would love to see the three of them in a room together.
That would be a very interesting dynamic for sure. And then I often have a lot of authors on my podcast as well. Are there any books that you've been reading lately that you could recommend? Don't have to be about film, could be nonfiction, fiction, anything that you've been enjoying lately.
Do you know, I wish I could tell you that I had read a book recently, but this film has so preoccupied me. I've not read a book in a long time because I've been working 18 to 20 hours a day in this. But I would say that, and I'm going to say, go back and look at this. It's The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola's notes on making The Godfather. And I would say maybe that is the behind the scenes filmmaking. If you want to follow along as a filmmaker, but also follow along as an audience member, I think this book is brilliant.
Excellent. And lastly, before we wrap things up, I know you're in the final push here for Oscar votes in the next couple weeks and days, but if you have anything lined up next, what's next on your radar? And then where can people follow you on social media to get updates and keep track on what you're working on?
I'm on Instagram. I am on Red, White, and Blue has its own Instagram handle, so you can follow us there. Hopefully, you'll be able to supply them with the handles of it all. But I've got many projects in development in the TV space, and I do have a feature that I want to direct. So, and there's a bigger story to tell around Red, White, and Blue. So maybe, for all I know, we go in and tell a bigger film because we do this story so that it serves Rachel Johnson, who's our character. It serves that story as a short film in and of its own right, but there is a bigger story to tell particularly historically with people of color who've been denied their healthcare and reproductive rights, but trying to tell that in a very characterful way, always leading with story first, not necessarily the message of it all. So that's kind of what I'm up to. And then just to say about the books of it all, I'm hoping when after March 10th happens that I take a long break. So actually, please, could you send me lots of book recommendations of things that you think I should read? Because I absolutely miss being able to read for pleasure. And the only books I've read recently have been actually for work, and people wanted me to adapt the book into something for film or TV. So please send me your list.
Absolutely. We'll put it out into the world and have people send their recommendations.
Thank you.
Well, Nazrin, thank you so much for all the time today. I really enjoyed speaking with you and getting to learn more about Red, White, and Blue. And of course, best of luck at the Oscars next month.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate speaking to you, Jonathan, and I hope you have a great time interviewing all the other people that I'm sure are going to come to your magnificent show and program.
Thank you again to my guest today, Nazrin Choudhury. Her short film, Red, White, and Blue, is nominated for Best Live Action Short Film at the 96th Academy Awards. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eaterberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eaterberg. Please be sure to join me for my next episode, where I speak with another Oscar-nominated filmmaker. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.